Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Lisa Mladnick. I'm a Roman Catholic, a professional life coach, and a Clifton Strengths coach certified by the International Coaching Federation and the Gallup Corporation. The Wonderfully Made show is all about the intersection of faith and talent. Our guest tonight is an inspiring TV host and author, Ann DeSantis. But before I bring her on, I'd like to explain that we'll be using the language of the world-renowned talent and personality profile, the Clifton Strengths Assessment. So we'll be talking about talent themes, which are ways to identify the powerful, God-given potential found in all of us, and the idea of strengths, which is when talents are mature. It's when your natural capabilities become so well developed they become part of your personal style and help you perform with consistent excellence for God's glory and your greater joy. Because when we know our own design, we experience gratitude and greater confidence, love, and appreciation for the designer. Tonight, it's my joy to welcome a dear friend and someone who is very busy making the world a better place. Ann DeSantis is the director of the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith, which offers pastoral accompaniment for families in crisis. She is the author of the new book, Love and Care for the Marginalized, 40 Meditations, Spiritual Outreach Reflections for Catholics. She is a wife, mother of 2 adult daughters, and is also the host of Journeys in Faith with Ann DeSantis on Fiat Ministry Network every Friday at 8:30 p.m. ET, and the host of the podcast Sowing Hope with Bill Snyder on Patchwork Heart Radio. Find out more about Ann DeSantis at anndesantis.com, and that's ANNEDESANTIS.com. That'll be in the show notes. But I'd just like to welcome you to the program, Ann. It's just good to see you.
It's great to be here. And
so, Ann, start us out. You do so many things, but I really want to start by just talking about your new book, this beautiful way of kind of scaling out your service to others by presenting this devotional. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And so the name of the book again is called Love and Care for the Marginalized. It's 40 Reflections for Catholics. And the reason that I wrote this book was, well, we all went through a rough year back in 2020. And that's really when this came to me, the idea of writing a book that was all about caring for those who are marginalized. And so if you buy the book, which is available on Amazon and Kindle, it's also from a publisher called Charis Publishing, is that every day you will get a quote, a reflection, a prayer, and also a call to action. And my question that I ask people, which comes up a lot during interviews, is who are the marginalized in your own life? Because a lot of times when we think about the marginalized, we think about people like the homeless or people who are being rejected by society for some reason or another. But, you know, the marginalized are people that we know. They're people that are in our homes, neighborhoods, extended family members, in our schools, churches, workplaces. They're even on those Zoom calls that we do with a bunch of people sometimes. Maybe they're those quiet people. But the reason I wrote the book is because making that outreach to the marginalized is really what Christ commands all of us to do when we think about what he says in the book of Matthew 25, in that, when did I see you hungry or thirsty or naked or needing shelter? And he asks us that same question. And so even if they're not people who are physically hungry or thirsty for food or drink, which can be, you know, one way or the other, they could be the corporal works of mercy that we need to do, reaching out to someone, right? But many times they need something called active listening from us. And that's the ability for us to listen to them intently and what's going on in their lives and what can we do to help them. And so that's why I wrote this book. Thanks so much for allowing me to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a beautiful book. And it just feels like the right next piece in the things that you do, because you do so much in ministry and in media. And now to have some of these ways of stepping into a way to think about and pray about the marginalized, to notice them more, is so perfect coming from you, Ann. Really appreciate you. Oh, you're so welcome. All right. So that's exciting. Everybody do look for Anne's book, and that will be in the show notes as well. I'd like to now just point out, as we do in this show, that we have Anne's top 5 Clifton Strengths talent themes on screen for us. And so we've got maximizer, responsibility, discipline, achiever, and self-assurance. You'll notice that 2 of them are orange. Those are influencing themes. People with influencing tend to be charismatic. They tend to kind of inspire other people to action. They make things better. They bring a lot of confidence into the spheres where they are called to operate. And then if you look at the purple, those are executing themes. And executing themes are people who get things done. So you can see why Anne is a director of a really important ministry. She's somebody who gets in there and uses her responsibility to really take ownership of what she does. She's the kind of person who has a lot of loyalty to the people that she cares about and the people that she's in any kind of relationship with. And her discipline helps her to really carry through and get things into not just routines, but the discipline to follow through on things, and combining with her maximizer to the best that they can be, as she likes to say, to make the good better. And Gallup says something very similar. And then there's good old achiever. Achiever turbocharges everything. Achiever really loves to accomplish things and has a lot of stamina. People can be a little blown away by achievers because they can work long days, and achievers can get frustrated for other people for not keeping up. Often achievers will say that other people are just moving too slowly, or they don't understand why they can't act, make a decision, and follow through. So that's something to be aware of if you're an achiever too. And then Anne's self-assurance again brings a certain confidence, a certain ability to trust her own instincts and intuition in making decisions and in leading. So we have here before us a very lovely natural leader who can be trusted to carry a lot of responsibility, and Anne certainly does that every day of her life.
Wow, thank you. I feel very complimented right now, so I do appreciate that. And let's not read the bottom 5.
Yeah.
LOL. But yeah, I love taking the Clifton strengths, because you get those 34, as you referred to, talents. And, when you read them and when you take the assessment, you're really going to see those themes. Like Lisa said, right there in front of you on the screen, you see a couple of those orange colors and then the purple ones together. They mean something about who you are. And I definitely see with these top 5, those themes in my own life. And I would say, especially the top 3, not to say that the 4 and 5 they're all important, but the maximizer, the responsibility, and the discipline, those top 3 for me are really who I am, and the combination of those responsibility and the discipline with the maximizer is just, I don't know. All I can say is that the test is pretty correct.
Yeah. And one of the neat things too, Anne, that you and I have talked about in going over your assessment is that if we put a whole bunch of people in a room that had the same top 5 in the same order, and by the way, that's extremely rare. It's a 1 in 33.4 million chance that you will even find one of those people. But no matter how many you could find in this world, and almost 27 million people have taken this assessment worldwide, if you read the nuanced feedback that comes through with your top 5 from Gallup, they'd all be really different. And part of the reason is that God has wonderfully made you and you're a unique and unrepeatable soul. But it's also because if we looked at all 34, if we went all the way down, they're all in a different order and have different, kind of magnitudes of power in your personality, and they all influence each other. And so you bring in your own spiritual charisms and your upbringing and your culture, and all of that combined, and still, I'm sure, is just the tip of the iceberg for how uniquely and unrepeatably made your soul is. So this being just the tip of the iceberg, it's kind of awesome when it makes you appreciate God's incredible creativity.
Yeah, it really does. And like I said, I love taking it. And not only that, I'm married and I have 2 daughters, which some of the viewers know who know me here. And I know you know that, Lisa, and Kent, the producer. So my whole family took it. My husband took it and my 2 daughters. And it was really interesting to see the differences between all of us within our own family. We had some themes that were similar, and then we did have some differences too. So I can't recommend it enough for people watching. If you haven't taken it yet, please do. And Lisa's great at what she does. And, you can get that complimentary session with her where she will go through and talk to you about it. And then she can tell you about all of the other services that she provides in terms of making the most of your talent themes and living who you are as a creation of God.
Thank you so much, Anne. The
Mhm.
check's in the mail. Appreciate you. Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun going over this. This really is fun work. So, Anne, just looking at your top 5, those are the ones that Gallup says, the Gallup Corporation, which owns StrengthsFinder, says that these are the ones you tend to use every day. Looking at your top 5, your 11, 12, and 13, those are still highly influential parts of your talent theme makeup. But these are the ones you really do tend to land in the most often. Where do you see, when you reflect on your life, that these talents have actually helped you to succeed and become the person that you are?
Well, thank you, especially looking at the top 5. And, also looking at sort of the way I was raised and my upbringing and all that. I was the oldest out of 5. So for me, I think that birth order, now you would know more about this than I would, Lisa, I'm sure you do. But the theme of being that oldest child in a family where the first 4 in my family were very close in age. We were all only a year apart. So that you can imagine that my mom had 4 little kids all at the same time, literally like either a year or 18 months. And so when I look at maximizer, responsibility, and discipline as the top 3 there, I definitely think that as I grew and got older and developed my own responsibilities in life after I finished school and went on my own and, was married and everything like that. I do think that those attributes have helped me to do the things in life that God put before me.
Yeah. What are some ways that you see your maximizer operating in your normal life?
Well, you said it at the beginning there, that it is someone who can help to make the good, what's already good, better. And the way I look at that is it's someone who is one of those positive reinforcement people. If you know what that means, is that they focus on what's good about something in order to try to boost it up and make it better. And it's kind of the opposite from the idea of someone who's a fixer, someone who, this is a broken down thing, it's not going, things aren't going too well, and making something that's going very poorly to getting better. I definitely think that I'm the kind of the opposite of that, which is something that's already good and focusing on the positive aspects of someone or something and helping it to be propelled to the next level. And so for me, in the work that I do, and also just in being a mother, I think I always try to live that sort of proactive way instead of reactive, if that makes any sense. Meaning that focusing on what you can do, what you're able to do, right? Not what you're not able to do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I'm pretty good at discerning that. If I really don't think that I can do something, what I do to be my maximizer comes in where I say, who can I ask? Who can I get help from? So that's where that comes into my own life, is that I can admit what my weaknesses are, meaning that if I know I can't do something, that I'm not good at it, that I can at least say to myself, well, I might not be able to do it, but I know somebody who can. And so I do think that that's where the maximizer comes into play.
That's really interesting, Anne, because you'll see, for those of you familiar with the assessment, there are 2 other colors. There's blue for relationship theme, there's green for strategic thinking, and in her top 5, you don't see a relationship theme. But Anne is actually fantastic at relationships. How? She maximizes those relationships. She's able to, and she, of course, she has other talent themes that she's connecting with when she's in relationship. But what she just described is, I can't do everything, but I value the contributions of others. And
Mm.
so she's able to call out the best in them and maximize their potential as well. That is a beautiful place to be with someone in relationship.
Yes. And I think it is interesting. And thank you for saying that, that the relationships are not in my top 5. And for that, I will say that as outgoing as I seem, being the TV host, the podcaster, an author and things like that, if you threw me in a group of a bunch of people, like 10 people, where there's one sort of alpha in the group, and I think you all know what I mean by that, someone who is naturally funny, witty, says the right thing at the right time, that is not me. And I am the first to admit it. I am not an alpha. I will admit, I am a listener. I am a person who's very adept at what I hear and see, but I'm not an alpha. I'm not one of those people. I'm not overly witty. I will be the first to admit that. I don't say funny things. The things that I say, not everybody laughs at. So I'm not a communication. I think it's somewhere on my lower half, believe it or not. But the maximizer is, because I'm very observant and I'm pretty good at reading people. So as much as I'm not good at that, being witty and funny and a good communicator with big groups of people and things like that, I'm good at seeing, as you said, what other people are good at. And I'm willing to step aside so that that alpha can come forward and take charge. But I do like to raise my hand in a gentle way and say, I have another opinion here. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's a kind of leadership that's more of a kind of a humble servant leadership. I mean, people who are very strong, very commanding personalities, like you're describing, the alpha in the room, can also learn to be humble servant leaders. But because you're oriented towards noticing people, as you said, that's a really good way to put it. And your number 6 is, I believe, it's arranger, yes, which is a relational theme. That's the person who can make all the pieces come together well. And so while you're noticing the best and calling out the best and helping people to work together well, that's a kind of leadership that's actually very rare. Because you're a listener and because you have that kind of awareness, it's more kind of the way the corporate world is moving. That team-oriented listener approach is bearing a lot more fruit in terms of engagement, job satisfaction, general happiness, and profit margins even. So, the top-down authoritarian model is really kind of on its way out.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, not that I respect people with that personality. I can't say that I always get along perfectly well with authoritarian people because I am so far the opposite of that. I mean, I try to be gentle about the way I approach people. And when I communicate with people, I try to take into consideration their personality, their circumstances, and, just even the relationship that I have with them. But when I deal with someone who, the judgmental kind of people, judgmental, authoritarian, my way or the highway, those kind of people, I would say for me, they're usually the hardest personalities for me to deal with. So I can't say that my closest friends have that personality, if that makes any sense. But I do my best to deal with them. If that, I know that you as a talent coach, you understand that.
This is some of the work that we do with, that I do and many other strengths coaches do with married couples, work teams, etc., is looking at those top 5 in particular. And also, as you mentioned before, which is very insightful, Anne, what's at the bottom? Like if you've got something at number 1 and your spouse or your closest work partner has it at the bottom, you're going to need to notice and kind of leverage each other's talents to work together, but also start to speak each other's language a little bit. When you understand how talent involves how people think and feel even and behave. And so when you start to see that and see what brings the other person joy, you can start to speak into their world. Let's look at your responsibility too, Anne. When you look at that ability to really take ownership of what you do and that love, even you get an endorphin payback in your brain as someone with responsibility high just for taking on responsibilities. So say a little bit about what that looks like in your life.
Yeah, responsibility is a very big part of who I am because in my head, there's always a checklist of what I need to do and what I told someone I would do. And I have a very, very good memory. I'm one of those people in my family that somebody will ask me, what year did we do this? Or um, who was at that party? Or what did that person say at that time? Like, I have that sort of, funny to say, like that photographic, like audio, it's more of an audiographic memory. I can actually remember the voices of like the past. I can remember what someone said, their exact words, what they told me, and I know that might sound kind of crazy, but so for me, when somebody asks me to do something, especially if it is a responsibility, I take it very seriously. If I told you that next week I would do this, that, or the other, unless something really bad happens that stops me from doing it, I won't make an excuse. So that's pretty much what that's all about. And it's funny, that's also one of my husband's top 5 too. So we both had that in common, was that we both had responsibility as one of our top 5. And I think that also came into play with me with motherhood, because when my daughters were born, I was very much kind of like a type A at work before I had kids. Work was very important to me. It was one of the most important things in my life. I thought about work all the time, even when I wasn't there. And so when I had my daughter, God spoke to me and said, you know what, now this is your responsibility. This is what you need to do. And so right after my daughter was born, 2 weeks later, I went in and told my boss I quit. And I didn't feel bad, because that responsibility of being a mother was first. And so that, I think that's where that played in part with motherhood and family life, is that the responsibility took number 1 for me. Not to say somebody's watching and thinking, well, for me, I look at it differently. I felt my responsibility was to go back to work. And that's someone's right to do that. But for me, that's where it played out.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Anne, because it does play out uniquely in each person. We are all really different, and it's part of the beauty and the incredible variety of God's creation. If you wouldn't mind, Anne, responsibility too can get spread too thin. That's a common struggle of people with responsibility, and it's interesting that you and your husband both have it. Do you help kind of check each other getting overcommitted? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I would say that we do know when to relax in this house, in terms of, it's the weekend or it's nighttime or whatever. But my husband and I are pretty active with different things. I mean, I'm on a couple board of directors, and of course I work with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. I love working there. And I also do some other things. Obviously I've written this book. I was co-author with 2 other books too. I'm really not that much of a TV person, aside from Fiat Ministry Network.
Well, we haven't mentioned that you're an actress and a model
Yeah.
too, Anne. I mean, if everything you just mentioned was not enough, you do a lot.
Yeah.
You do a great deal.
Well, I think where that thank you. I think where that plays in is that I'm one of these people that I have a lot of interest. So things just come by me and I say, oh, that looks like fun. So even if I wind up only doing it like a little bit, like that's what I do with the modeling and acting. It's really what I refer to as a commercial model. I'm not one of those people that's seeking to be famous or seeking to get on some big time movie or TV show. I'm really not. I'm pretty blunt about the reason I do it. I do it basically to bring in a little bit of extra money for the family, because when you do these jobs, if you can get a good one, some kind of commercial or something, or an ad, it can pay, a few $100s or even a couple, 1,000 or more, for one day. So it brings in some extra money, which is pretty nice once in a while when that comes in. And so I do like that. It's creative. I get to meet people, and it's a great way to evangelize too, because to be honest with you, in that whole world of the acting and modeling world, there's not a whole lot of like devoted religious people, whether they be Catholic, Christian, Jewish, whatever. You don't see that too much. Usually, I think some people, and not to stereotype, because in every business and every profession, there's people of all different religions. But I'm just saying that my experience is, I haven't seen that many people of faith on the jobs that I've done, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. because I'm sure they
Mm.
are.
Yeah, it can be very hidden in that profession. I was in that profession as a young woman a million years ago myself. And some people do carry around a deep faith or a spirituality, but it's just not popular
Not
in
popular.
that world, right? I
Yes,
mean, really,
that's a good way to say it.
in our times, it's not considered hip in many spheres.
Hmm.
So that's something that I love that you pulled out the opportunity to evangelize. And I love that you
Yeah.
drew that thread of responsibility also back to your family life. That's those you'll notice as you're listening to Anne or anyone on this program, you'll start to hear their core values speaking powerfully. And that's another thing about people with high achieving, executing themes is that they do tend to have drivers within them that are kind of unshakable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, would you mind saying a little bit about your discipline and maybe even weave that together with Achiever? Because Achiever does tend to be that thing that kind of really boosts and I like to say turbocharges the other talents.
Well, I think with those, you know how you hear sometimes people say that they don't exercise or go to the gym because they don't have either the motivation or someone to go with them, or, I was one of those people throughout my life. And I'm not saying that I am never lazy, because I can be lazy, but I'm the type of person that doesn't need a lot of motivation to do something. Meaning that if I say tomorrow morning I'm going to run a mile, um, come heck or high water, unless something comes up, if I really put my mind to it, I will get up, get my sneakers on, and go run. And there's nothing really that'll stop me from doing that. And if I make a list in my head, what am I going to do by the end of this day today? I will do it for the most part. 90% of the time, I will finish those tasks unless something comes up that stops me, really and truly stops me from doing it. Now, the way that it interacts with the responsibility, though, is that, you know how some people, like, they're very good at saying, well, I have to do this task. So if my phone rings or if I get a text or an email, I'll get back to it later. Or maybe I might not even get back to them today because I've got to do this task. Well, because of my responsibility, I will take random phone calls all the time. I take random calls. I take random text messages and things like that. Not saying that sometimes I'm not able to pick up the phone and it will go to the voicemail if I'm cooking dinner or something like that, but for the most part, if I'm able to do it, I will. And I know some people won't do that. And then that will hold me up a little bit. But I try to live the way things were, I think, prior to like 15 years ago, where before cell phones, before all the emails that came in, is that we had to either communicate with someone on the phone or in person. It wasn't just everything was digital all the time. And so I try to remember kind of where I came from. And I know, Lisa, you and I are both in that sort of over 55 age range where we remember all that, right? We remember where
Yes.
life was like, where you had to pick up the phone and you got together with people. There were no texts or anything. So I try to
Yeah.
remember that. I try to remember that relationships are the most important thing in life, aside from your faith and your relationship with God, right? Your family, those are the most important things. But I do think that even aside from business and what I do for a living, that those important relationships are the way that God speaks to all of us, and to me especially, because, when we die someday and there's a funeral, nobody's going to stand around and talk about, what did Anne do back in September of 2021 at work? I mean, it's important. Don't get me wrong. It's important. But what they're going to think about, and I think what God cares about, is, did Anne care about the people that came to her during the day? Was she an authentic person? And as you talked about my book, Love and Care for the Marginalized, I mean, to me, if I had to say, what is my life mission, other than my family, other than my faith, God taught me a lesson about 12 years ago or so, when I went through my own rough time. And what God taught me during that time, my daughter was going through a really challenging time in her life. She was only 9 or 10 years old. I became depressed, and I came to my faith. And my faith is what got me through, but it took a long time. All right, I'm not going to lie. It took me 4 years of a mild depression. And God got me through it. But what he taught me during that time, not to say that I was thoroughly marginalized or anything. I wasn't, because I live in a nice home. I have a good husband and a good family, but I found myself without the love and support I deserve outside of this home. Okay. By that, I mean that people that I was friends with in community, and I'm not going to say where, you know, the different places that we're all involved in community, didn't catch those signs of that I still needed friendship, because what I heard a lot of times from people was that they were praying for me, right? They were going to pray real hard for me, which was wonderful. I really appreciate it. But their answer was that that was all they needed to do, that the prayer was enough. And it really and truly, I do appreciate those prayers. But I found myself also friendless. So those same people that were praying for me weren't calling to get together, weren't staying in touch with me, weren't checking in here and there. So I found myself very much alone. And I will use the word, you know, at that time, like I said, not thoroughly marginalized, but I was, you know, kind of left alone and without support other than my husband and my kids. And I was trying to take care of them. So that's why I wrote the book, Love and Care for the Marginalized, because I think that all of us can be better listeners and caring about what's really important at the end of our lives. And that's people, right? Aside from God, aside from the Catholic Church and what we care about in our faith and whatever faith everyone is practicing and what we believe, but the people that God has put in our lives. And so that was the lesson that I learned. So I think to me, that's where that responsibility also comes into play, because I take that very seriously, that when I read something like Matthew 25 and Jesus separates, right? He's going to separate the sheep from the goats. And it's going to be according to, in my view, what I read, when I was hungry, did you give me food? When I was thirsty, when I was naked, you know, what were you there? And I want to be there. I want to teach people to help them to be there for other people too. Because it is very important, you know, we have responsibilities in our own home, but we also have this responsibility as part of being Catholic. I think it is part of being Catholic. It's not just a checklist. It's not just, you know, did I go to Mass every Sunday or did I do my prayers? It's what did I do to imitate, right? To imitate Christ. So I thank you so much for that opportunity just to talk about these things.
It's very stirring. I mean, I'm hearing your self-assurance in here too, and I want to touch on that too, because you show up in life with such conviction, and it gives other people permission. And it makes me wonder if during that time when you were struggling with the pain that was in your life, my experience, I had a similar experience a long time ago too. I don't need to give the details, but I noticed, because I was kind of a class clown when I was a young woman, I entertained people. When I went through a depression, I was no longer entertaining people and I became completely invisible. So my curiosity is, if you look back on the role that you played in those friendships, how did that being marginalized take you out of the normal loop where people saw you showing up and being Anne, and you stopped being that version of Anne for a period of time. And so it can almost make you invisible. And I hope everybody listening who's ever been depressed or who knows somebody who's depressed, they don't always know what to ask for when they're going through it. And they may even be irritable and difficult to be around at times. Hello, I can tell you. But they still need to know, right, Anne, that somebody's thinking of them and somebody actually wants to see them and spend time with them whenever they're able to do that.
Well, you made it. Thank you for sharing your story too, Lisa. I appreciate you sharing that. For me, knowing you as a friend, because, you know, I care about that. I care about friendship. I think you're right. It is enough to care about someone. It is enough to just let them know. But the main thing is, what I think, the main thing is not to give up on them, okay? Because since that time, 12 years ago when that happened, I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little morbid, and I don't mean to sound it this way, but I felt like I died to some of those people in my life back then. I had died because I never got the phone calls. I never got the continual friendship. And I do feel, I'm going to say this, and I say it in a kind way, not in a rude way, but I do feel that I kind of died to some of them. Not that they meant to do it. That's how I'll make it more a gentle statement. I don't think they meant to do that, but I died to so many people. I remember seeing one guy, I'm going to not say who it is or anything, but I saw him at an event, and it was a person that my husband and I had been good friends with, or family and all that stuff. And his comment was to me, "Where have you been? We never see you anymore. We thought you," and he did say this, "we thought you died." Okay. So instead of saying, "Hey, you left our friend group, we didn't hear from you, we thought you died," like he was saying it jokingly. And in my head, I was saying, well, little did you know. I mean, I was like going through living hell for 4 years, if that makes sense, But I don't think people mean the things that they say sometimes. They really don't. I don't think they mean it the way that they sound. I think that some people are not as sensitive as I am. We talked about that alpha personality. I think if you were to look at personality types, I would be on one side, and then the alpha would be on the other side. That's how opposite I am from that alpha, because I like to let other people get involved and, listen, right? You got to use those ears. You have to listen to what people say. And as far as the self-assurance, that I can say came from day one since I was a little kid. I mean, my mom said that, I remember just hearing from the family that I was the true oldest, just outgoing and that kind of thing. But I don't try to be that person who is the bossy type, if that makes any sense. So that's why I think I don't deal very well with those kinds in my life, because I try to be engaging with everybody and let other people take stage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My curiosity is, and you've got so much life experience and you're obviously a highly developed person. So going through the Clifton Strengths wasn't a total life-changing event for you, but I'd love to know, having named your talents and had a deep discussion on each of them and kind of turned them over in your mind, what things have you noticed, maybe what are you noticing that's different, or what's shifting in your own self-awareness and your awareness of how you operate at your best?
Well, you helped me with that. And so I'm going to just cut in here and say to people who are watching and listening, like, Lisa's the person that you want to get in touch with. Okay. She's the person that you want to set up your appointment and take the test, because you know what? It's going to make the world of difference. And Lisa, everything that she does for this show and for being the talent coach, it's what it's all about. So I'm just telling all the people watching, your friends, my friends, people who watch this network, is that I can't say enough good about what this is going to do for you. Okay. And yeah, some of it is going to, there is monetary, donate, involved. It does cost, but it's worth every penny. It's worth every penny of what you pay for her services. So just please do check it out on her website. So you were asking me again about what it's done for me. To me, it has been life-changing. And one of the things that you told me was that as a maximizer and as a responsibility and disciplined person, I can go from one task to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and not pat myself on the back, not to sound like it's all about me, because it's not, right? But you told me, you said, compliment yourself. Okay, you got that email done today. Great job. You got dinner cooked on time and it wasn't terrible. Right? Because one thing about maximizer is that I can go from making good better, but I wouldn't necessarily that I am what we call a perfectionist. And I know there's probably perfectionists that are listed down on the talents. That's not me. Okay. Meaning that in some ways I can be a type A, but in most ways, I'm definitely your classic type B, meaning that good enough is okay and it's acceptable. Okay. Meaning that it doesn't have to be every single I dotted and T crossed. You do your best and that's all you can do. And honestly, that's all I can do. So if I do a million things in one day, they might not have been an A+ on every single thing that I've done, but I got them all done. So I would say that's what it comes down to, is maximize the responsibility and discipline, is that I don't need to sit with something forever to say that it's good. Let's get it in there. Let's finish it. Let's call it call it a day because it's as good as it's going to get, if that makes any sense. I will not go over my mind 50 times about whether something was perfect,
Mm, yeah.
and that's just me. Now I will bring in the way I was raised, which my mom and my family did a great job, was raised to be more on that perfectionist side, the beautiful home, perfectly kept, everything, which to me, I think having pets and also not troubling myself with everything having to be perfect and the best and the nicest of everything, helps me not to fall into that perfectionist category, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it really does. And these nuances are really important because, as I said before, the nuances that you get back on your report are not going to be just like anybody else's. And so Anne's maximizer is not a perfectionist.
No.
Anne's make the good better is not make it the best it could be, or I'm going to feel like a
Right.
failure. Anne has found a balance so that she can have that nice, sane, happy place where when the job is done, it's done. I also want
Right.
to mention that
Hmm.
you made a fantastic point. It's really important for people that are high achievers. They can feel, if they didn't get every single thing done on their list at the end of the day, they can feel like failures. And they can just breeze through a million accomplishments and they're all in the rear view mirror and it's a blur and they're too easily forgotten. And this idea of celebrating accomplishments, even in little ways, in case just to take it a little further, that idea of saying good for you or looking at yourself in the mirror and going, those little things actually cause a brain reaction. It releases dopamine into your brain, and your brain has something called neuroplasticity. So it rewires because of the pleasure of that memory. Ooh, I did that thing. And it makes it easier for you to succeed at it in the future. So this is not about narcissism or, oh, I just got to keep patting myself on the back because I'm so great. It's really not. It's about working with the way God made us. There's a lot of celebrate with harp and lyre, dance and sing and shout praises to the Lord. And so we're meant to be in that place of thanksgiving and praise and acknowledgement that through God's grace, wow, I was able to do that. I can do all things in Christ and praise God and let that good feeling happen in your soul and in your brain. It is good for you.
Yeah, it does help. And it's a good point to say, and I would say I try to work on this too, because of that idea of I help to make the good better. And like you said, not necessarily the good, the best, you know, and so I can have a lot of different things that I like to do. And I might not be an A+ at everything that I do, but I do it because it's fun. I do it because I like to do it. I don't do it because I want to cross the finish line and say I was the best at what I did and there was nobody better than me. Because to me, to be quite honest, I don't care if I'm the best. I don't need to be the best. God loves me exactly the way I am, And I said on another show when I was interviewed that, some people say, well, they don't know how much God loves them. And that's why they have gotten into bad things or done things. I never had a problem with how much God loves me. I know God loves me. My problem was with people, not God. My problem wasn't with God. It was more with people. And like I said, in those alpha personalities, which to me are those authoritarian, bossy people kind of thing that, to me, I like to work with people, and it's not about somebody else being the best. It's about doing what God wants, right? And what God's will is for each and every one of us.
What a
And
beautiful place for us to
yeah.
start to wind down. I want to get you to also just say a few words before we wrap up, Anne, about how looking through the lens of your talents affects the way you look at the future. What do you see ahead?
Well, I think that my top 5 helped me to be pretty positive. I am a worrier. Sometimes, not going to lie. I can worry about things, whether I'll get everything done or whether I remember to do everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think in general, I believe in God. I believe in not only my talents, but I believe in everybody else's too. Because I think the best way that we can make this world better is working together for all those talents. And I try to take that into consideration for the work that I do with a foundation, with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, as the director at nonnatus.org, and trying to take into consideration all those beautiful talents that I see from our board and from the people who work with us and all the people that we help, and people like you, Lisa, who are doing beautiful work for the Lord that we also try to promote and tell people about, and try to, suggest somebody like you to help them with their journey, because that's what you're doing. You are helping to make this world an even better place, because there's gifts and talents that are hidden inside of people. And when you take the Clifton Strengths, when you take that assessment, and when you get help from Lisa, where she will talk to you, and when she has a whole website that's designed to educate you on who you are and who other people are, so that you can work and collaborate together in even greater ways. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thanks, Anne. Everybody, you're going to want to find Anne at annedesantis.com. It's in the show notes. Also find her at nonnatus.org and at Fiat Ministries. She has beautiful programs. We'll have those links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Anne, and thanks everyone for being with us. To learn more about your growing talents, as Anne said, you can visit me at wonderfullymade139.com, and that's from Psalm 139. I'm wonderfully made. Wonderful are all your works. So it's wonderfullymade139.com. You'll find lots of resources. You can contact me about coaching. I have a community there. And anyway, thanks to Kent, our producer, for doing such a fantastic job. See you next month, everybody, for another episode of Wonderfully Made.